I'm Sean,
I'm Luis.
and this is Gearheads. Where we are going to be talking about history of cars and pretty much why we like them. The first one we're going to go over is the Corvette. This is going to be a 3-part series, and we're going to see where it takes us. So, you can't start talking about the Corvette without the creation of Chevy. History. You have to go through the history of the company that made probably, I would argue, one of the best sports cars ever made.
Oh yeah, you're talking about sports cars, yes, but we're talking
Like,
about anything else now.
Yeah. Sports car, yes. All right, so in all honesty, when William Durant formed GM, he had a monopoly of everything. He was going through and he was buying Cadillac, Pontiac, and everything else. Well, in there, his greatest failure... Shit. His greatest failure led to the creation of Chevy. So after a year of being president of General Motors, he went after Henry Ford's most successful company.
Ford Motor Company.
Ford was concerned about Selden's patent suit claiming innovation on the automobile and was open to selling to GM if he could retain the rights of the motorized farm implements. So what happened, I'll just go over that bullet point again and we'll start from there. So Ford was concerned about Selden's patent suit claiming innovation of the automobile, which he was open to selling to GM. What happened was, so I don't know, I can't remember his first name, but Selden, before there was GM and Dodge and Chrysler and all them, there was some guy named Selden who was claimed he made the automobile. So
he was the first one to invent it.
Yeah, see, that's what he claims. So what happened is he ended up putting a patent on it, and the government accepted it. And any one of the companies that didn't sell, I guess not sell, but pay the price that Selden was asking for, he would be able to sue him. Well, Ford,
smart.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it is smart, but I mean, Ford wasn't paying that shit. Ford still did not pay that, regardless. Later on, the government ended up seeing that Selden's patent was complete shit. This is dumb. He may have, he didn't. All the cars that the companies were making, he didn't own those cars. I mean, yeah,
Right, but he was still getting money from them.
Oh yeah, it was before. I mean, before the government realized that it was dumb, they ended up paying him, but not Ford. Ford didn't, but everyone else did, just so that way they couldn't get sued. So that guy ended up getting money from it anyways. It was so dumb. Let's see here. GM was gonna pay Ford $2 million in cash up front for the company. Plus, he was going to give him an extra $4 million at 5% interest over 3 years.
You hear that now, and that's nothing.
Well, I mean,
still $4 million.
I mean, for a company, that's not a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But back then, that was a lot.
Low, yeah.
October 26th in 1908, GM board gave William Durant authority to purchase the Ford if he could arrange financing to pay Ford.
Right.
And the banks were nervous about the just now starting auto industry, and they refused to give Durant the $2 million loan for the down payment.
Did they give him anything, or
no? They didn't. Yeah, they didn't give him anything. Because Ford was very adamant that it was this $2 million upfront cash or nothing. Well, they couldn't get... And at the time, GM wasn't... they weren't making a lot of money because of all the purchases that Durant was making.
Right, yeah.
So they couldn't do anything. So that's why they needed to get a loan from the bank. And because they weren't making any money, in 1910, GM kicked Durant out and the bankers took over the company, GM. So they were in charge of...
Is that why it's such shit?
Damn.
Roasted.
No.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Oh, shit, what happened? But even though after he was let go of GM, Durant, he began trying to come back from this and wanted to, he wasn't happy with just getting kicked out of GM and like, oh, no, I guess I'm content. No. He wanted to come back. So he hired retired Buick race car driver Louis Chevrolet.
Louis Chevrolet.
What a name.
Yep.
Chevrolet. That's how they got the
Louis
company.
Chevrolet. What a fucking name.
Louis Chevrolet. And the funny thing is that Louis Chevrolet, he's not American.
What is this, Japanese?
He was a Swiss race car driver that drove for Buick for promotional events. So one of the most American car companies out there is named after someone a Swiss, named after a fucking foreigner. I mean, that's nothing wrong, but it's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
Durant returned to Flint, Michigan, where he had seeded GM early in the 1900s, and bought the assets of the failing Flint Wagon Works, which, wagons were going out of style because of the automotive industry on such a high rise at the time. So he then got former Buick engine builder Arthur C. Mason to set up a new operation while Durant organized the Little Motor Car Company.
Little motor car company.
Little Motor Car Company, which was supposed to be like, I guess, the sports cars back then. That was supposed to be a division of Chevy.
Supposed to be, but it wasn't.
Well, I mean, do you hear about the Little Motor Car Company anymore?
I guess not. You're right.
So, yeah, right. Durant became in charge of the Chevrolet Motor Company on November 3rd of 1911. Louis Chevrolet was not an officer, but he experimented with large luxury cars while the Chevrolet Motor Company's little brand sold lower priced cars against Ford. So that's what the Little Motor Car Company was supposed to be. Supposed to be a direct competitor for Ford. So that way.
That's all they were selling them for like $800.
Yes. Yeah, they were. It was just lower. They were just trying to go against Ford because Ford with the Model T had such an advantage over everyone because everyone liked them. I mean, most of the time you went and you saw anything on the streets, it was all Model T most of the time.
Yeah.
The first production Chevrolet was the big $2,500 Classic 6 of 1912, which I'll put up on the screen soon. Editing and shit.
I always think it's funny when they put I'll put it right above me and they put it right
yeah, they put it down. Put it right here and it goes down there. But the first Chevys, as we know them, you look up any Chevy and they have a specific style, I guess you'd say. They were the 1914 Royal Mail Roadster, which was sold for $750, and the Baby Grand Touring Car, which could range anywhere between $875 to $1,475.
That's dependent on what?
I guess
the color.
I guess I mean, you do any car design now.
True.
I mean, it's gonna depending on what packages and everything that you want in there. I mean, hell, even back then.
What packages did they have back then? They were working one engine.
Yeah, one engine, but there's also interior options.
I guess
I think that's mainly what it was interior options and
color.
paint.
Yeah. I guess that's. I mean, I'm saying because it's a big gap.
That is a very big gap.
From almost 1,500.
Yeah.
But I guess color does make a difference.
Damn. Louis Chevrolet left his namesake company to return to racing, so he ended up selling his portion of the Chevrolet Motor Company to William Durant, and Durant and him did not see eye to eye at all.
At all.
Like most of the time, Chevrolet had an idea for the car, and Durant didn't want it. I mean, like it says up here, Louis Chevrolet was in charge of the Classic 6 of 1912, but I mean, you never really hear that,
Yeah.
So most of you don't really hear about the 1914 cars either, but I mean,
but think about it. Who was in the right if Chevrolet was selling cars that were worth $2,500, and then
back then that was a lot of money.
That's what I'm saying. And then they had that Royal Mill Roadster that was only barely $800.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that one?
It was Chevrolet. It was Chevrolet's idea for the $2,500 car. Durant wanted to make something cheaper. Because Chevrolet liked the big luxury cars and everything else like that, and Durant just wanted to take down Ford.
That makes sense. I mean, trying to sell as much as you can for the cheapest price.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So that's why Louis Chevrolet left the company. In 1916, the Chevy 490, which was sold for $490 at the time, was Durant's direct shot at the Model T. By now, Chevy was thriving with factories in places like Flint and New York City. Its success gave Durant the footing up to buy up GM stock with the help of DuPont. Sorry, fuck, bro.
You good?
I can't read. I'm dyslexic.
These names are weird.
These are.
You got DuPont.
Yeah, with the help of the DuPont family and the New York bank president, Louis. Is that Louis or Louis?
That should be Louis.
Louis J. Kaufman. So, in other words, Durant wanted to be back on top in GM. Because even though Chevy was doing good, GM had a whole bunch of other companies. Yeah. They had a lot more companies. On December 23rd of 1915, Chevrolet stockholders increased capitalization from $20 million to $80 million and used the $60 million to buy up the GM stock. So Chevrolet bought GM. It was not the other way around.
Really?
Yeah. So with the stock of Chevrolet increasing, there was a significant jump.
Should tell me from whenever he was trying to buy the Ford company, it was only $4 million, and now we jump up only a couple of years, and now it's worth the GM is worth $80 million.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big gap, bro. From $4 million trying to buy something and then
at the time,
selling something for $80 million.
See, at the time though, is that was when the automotive industry was first starting. Nobody knew it was gonna kick up, and they were thinking that Henry Ford was dumb enough to sell. I mean, Henry Ford had 2 failing companies before the Ford Motor Company.
That's true.
So they were thinking that he was going to be naive enough to.
So that was a good time to invest right there.
Yeah, 100%.
Right there,
Yeah, 100%. But the thing that interests me is that I always thought GM bought Chevrolet.
Yeah, that's what makes sense, but wow.
Chevy bought GM. And then if you go a couple years further, the panics, the recession, and the depression swung wilder and more frequent by then. By the late 1920s, amid another severe downturn, so GM wasn't making money again. GM kicked Durant out for the last time. Yeah. So just because Chevrolet GM and Durant was the president and everything like that, but the bankers still hold the power.
Right.
They're still the financial people in there. So if they don't see anything, then you're out. Bye. So that's the 1920s, and we're jumping ahead quite a bit.
30 years?
Something like that.
About 30 years, when the whole reason about this is about the Corvette, of course, that was invented around 1951 by designer Harley Earl. And he was inspired by this because, people that were coming back from the war, they were driving all these, international cars. They're like, why don't you drive an American vehicle? So that's why he decided to make this Corvette, the C1. And so the C1, as we know it, it was from 1953 to 1962. You good?
Yeah.
From 1953 to 1962, which in the early years, they only made the 300 of those Corvettes. And then, it was only a 6-cylinder automatic transmission. From the beginning of the years, like I said, there were 300 of them, which, right now that's nothing.
Even back then, that's still nothing.
That's nothing. Which, they still had some stuff that they had to work on, of course. And like I said, they wanted to make it a race car vehicle, which in the beginning of the production they ended up not doing that. So they made it as a looks vehicle. So, yeah. So we'll put a picture up over there, over there, and then, of course, he was also inspired by the Nash Healey, I believe it's called, the 2-seat sports car, which that's what the Corvette pretty much is. And they brought in an engineer called Zora Arkas Duntov.
Yeah, Duntov or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. Which he was the responsible of making the Grand Sport, which we're gonna be talking about here or later. But anyways, he made the 3.8 inline 6 with 3 Carter carburetors, mechanical lifters, and high lift camshaft with the blue flame. And you know what's funny? They had on the engine, of course, they had the blue flame, but that wasn't the original. It wasn't their idea. The blue flame was a while ago, and they made the engine look like yellowish.
Okay.
And supposedly, they decided, like, let's make the blue flame an actual blue flame. Like, let's make it blue. So supposedly that made the car have better carburation. That's weird, but that's what they thought. That's what they told people to sell.
Sell it more.
Yeah, to sell it more and a little bit more expensive. Huh. So they told people, and well, they did a pretty good job on saying that because it works.
Yeah, right.
And then people kept buying it. And then around 1955, they came up with a bigger engine, the 4.3 liter V8, and then throughout the years they keep making up these bigger engines with more horsepower. 57, you had the 4.5 liter V8 that was recorded, one of the highest speeds at 132 miles per hour.
That's pretty fast in 1957.
Yeah. But then you go a couple years ahead, they changed the look of the Corvette, which we'll be putting pictures, of course.
Yeah.
They changed the looks. They sold more. The rear lights and stuff like the headlights, it changed everything, and they started selling a lot more. They sold up to 10,000 by the end of the C1 era.
Okay.
So,
is that total or is that just 61?
No, that's total.
Total. Okay.
So I think it was like 10,200 or something like that. Total that they sold, and look how much money they were. They were $4,000.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, right now it's nothing.
Right. Yeah. Hell, if I could get a Corvette for $4,000, you bet your ass.
10. Honestly. And then, of course, they'll change like the couple of designs, like the boat tail that we know, today. And then in 1962, and before those years, they had all those.
Actually, it's not the boat tail we know today.
No, well,
it was the C8.
There was a C8. Yeah, that's true. And in the 1962, they changed from. They didn't want to have that solid rear axle anymore.
Really?
And then, of course, they keep wanting to make those bigger engines. And then they made the 5.4 liter that gave out 360 horsepower.
This is in the 60s.
This is just in the 60s, yeah.
What, your 5.2 from Dodge makes 235?
I think it makes less.
No, it's...
235.
It's 235. And that's a 95. It's fucking 30 years later.
But I mean, they're accomplishing what they want. They're trying to make it faster. They're trying to make it a sports car. Which in the early years, they didn't. But
not even
here,
close.
Yeah, here, of course, the second generation, we're going to hear about how they did all that stuff.
The second generation goes... The C2 Corvette is... pretty much, I mean, not anymore because of the C8 getting a huge complete makeover, which we'll go into in a later episode. But the C2 Corvette is, in my opinion, what started the Corvette looking like the Corvette we know.
Yeah, the Stingray.
Yeah, the Stingray. I mean, it's not just the Stingray, but I mean, just Corvettes in general.
The shape of it.
Just the shape of it. It's just, I mean... in a sense, because I mean the C2 and the C3 have their differences, and the C2 started it, and I think the C3 kind of carried that on. Like if you look through 3 through 7, it kind of looks the same, but just more modern. But we're talking about the C2 for right now. All right, the C2 was built between 1962 and 1967 for the model years of 63 through 67. It was the second generation of Corvette and was popularly... I can't say words.
Where does it say that?
Popularly.
Pop.
Say the word.
Popularly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Known as the Corvette Stingray. The last year of the C1 carried on designs into the new C2, featuring, the long nose of it, the compact cabin, and the short back end with the peaked fenders. The general shape of the car was almost the same, but not quite.
I mean, you also had like the headlights and the tail lights that they changed on C1 from the first build that they changed around like the 60s, I believe, that they changed those.
Yeah.
Tail lights, and then I believe those are the tail lights they still used today, aren't they?
What, the circular ones?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The C8 doesn't have it.
No.
But I believe up to like
the C7. The C7 doesn't have those either.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
We'll have to look this up.
But the funny thing is that you have the last few years of the C1, you had the two circular headlights up front, and they were just on the car. Well, those two circular headlights, which I didn't know because I have not seen my C3 Corvette's headlights yet, because nothing works on it. But from what I've read is that those four circular headlights were still still carried over to the next generation.
Really?
I think so, because from what even though they were folding pop-up headlights.
The folding pop-up headlights only was the C2, wasn't it?
No, the C3 has it too.
So it went from the C2 all the way to the C5?
I think so.
Or did they skip the C4 and the C3? Or no,
I guess when we go into those episodes, we'll know.
That's true.
But, yeah, see, so it says, whereas the C1 had the four round headlights, and the C2 had the pop-up headlights, they still had those four headlights in the pop-up headlights. So when you popped up those headlights, it was still four headlights.
We have to see this.
I'll put up a picture here. The grill and the bumper were styled differently as well, and the coupe of the C2 had a rear split window.
Okay.
So what? See, you looking at me like I'm all crazy and shit. So, if I put up a picture for us, see?
Looks like a damn spaceship.
It's a damn spaceship.
But I mean this was, if I remember correctly, they only did this rear window design in 1963 for 1 year. So that's why if you ask any Corvette collector or anyone who's enthusiast on these cars, they will tell you that a 1963 C2 Corvette is the one to have because of that rear window.
What does that do?
It's just,
it just looks good.
It just looks different.
Doesn't do anything. Doesn't give you like more better aerodynamics or anything.
No, no, it doesn't.
No.
The most prominent change of the C2 to the C1 was the front end, as most of you can probably tell right off the bat. So the design program leading to the first model of the Stingray was called the XP720. I could not
work out.
I couldn't find anything onto why they named it that. So
it was the fabricating number.
XP720.
Yeah.
Do you watch Rick and Morty?
No.
Is that from there?
No, there's like it's like the sex toy thingy.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
Maybe that's, yeah, it is. Like, oh, yeah.
Penis, and it's like I can't even remember. That's what that reminded me of.
All right. That's why I don't watch that show. Its goal of the Stingray, the goal was to give the Corvette a better ride, better handling, and more room for both passengers and luggage. It was pretty much just to make everything that was known about the Corvette and completely make it better. The Stingray stuck with the fiberglass body panels, but added a lot more steel for support because of it being fiberglass and not steel. The C2 Corvette ended up with almost twice as much steel, but the designers didn't want to have to increase the weight, so they decreased the fiberglass thickness.
Okay.
Which is kind of weird, I guess. The result was a Corvette that weighed even less than the previous one.
To make it go faster.
Yeah, you have to. You put a bigger engine in, you make it weigh less. That's the goal. That's the goal. That's how you make it better. The wheelbase, though, that ended up being shorter, but the interior room of the car was pretty much the same.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to do the interior and exterior, or did you want me to keep going?
Keep going, bro.
Keep going.
Doing a great job.
The C2 offered a new Factor 2 Corvette, a coupe.
Because what a coupe is.
Huh?
So people know what a coupe is.
So,
right?
so you have a convertible, which was all the C1 was, strictly convertible.
Yeah.
The coupe is pretty much a hard top with 2 doors.
I've seen pictures of a C1 with a hardtop. I don't know if it was, I'm pretty sure it was like aftermarket that they put on there, but I've seen them. It doesn't look good. It does not look good.
Well, it was probably had to be aftermarket because everything that I've seen is like the C1 was always a convertible.
Yeah.
Which, I guess, but...
I mean, it looks good as a convertible, though.
It's one of the only one of the few cars that I think looks good as a convertible. Shit. It gets skippy sometimes. Along with the futuristic looking fastback style of the Corvette being a coupe, it has a vertically centered divided rear windshield like I was telling you before. This feature was only offered in the 1963 year.
Is that what that is? 1963 year?
Yeah, the model year.
Okay. It's because the way that you said it.
Shut up. So like I said before, it is one of the most sought after Corvettes by enthusiasts. Just because they only did it for 1 year, I guess. Yeah,
we'll just do something a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it might be a pain in the ass to have something right down the center.
Yeah, I don't think I would like that.
But I mean, it was a thing back then, and I guess a lot of people didn't like it either because
it was only there for 1 year.
But now, oh, there it is. Yep. So the C2's quad headlights from the previous generation were actually still present, but hidden as folding lights. This was a Corvette design marker that would continue up until the C6 generation. Now, I wasn't sure, when they were saying this, I wasn't sure if they were talking about the folding lights or if they were talking about the quad headlights. If I had to guess,
I think it's both.
No, because I think it's a C5 where
the
fold-ups are just one headlight.
Put a picture right now, but I think you're right.
But yeah, I know for sure that they kept the folding lights up until the C6 because the C7 and the 8 don't have those anymore, which sucks because those are like badass. The glove box has increased room. The dash sorted a new set of round gauges, including a larger speedometer and tachometer. Even though the interior was roomier, the lack of external trunk meant that the luggage had to be loaded behind the front seats. So anyone who has a Corvette or has been in a Corvette or has seen seen a Corvette, I mean, there's literally just a little flat podium or stand behind the seats, and that's all you have for room.
Put your stuff in.
Put your shit in. So I mean, it's not
built for children.
It's not a grocery grabber. I can tell you that right now.
Well, you get looks if you go to the grocery store.
I mean, I feel like people just kind of judge you. Like, why the fuck is he driving a Corvette to the grocery store? There ain't no room.
Well, a lot of people nowadays are not gonna know. They just be like, "Oh, that is a badass car."
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. But back then,
you see somebody drive that to the store.
You're like, what? Where's your station wagon?
I can only carry 1 milk. 1 pound of milk.
I'll take 1 of your best milk. No, what do you mean? They had milkmans back then.
Oh, shoot, I miss those days. You're not that old.
Not that old, bro. They improved the chassis of it. They had a quicker ball race steering wheel. Not steering wheel, sorry. Steering gearbox. And with the short wheelbase, it made the C2 handle and maneuver better than the C1. Shorter wheelbase can contribute to a more jarring ride, uncomfortable and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So people can fit in there. Us fat people, because we do not fit in the C1, bro. No. You being tall, you being fat, that was not built for us.
No.
There's no room, and you can barely scoot that seat back.
Well, yeah. I mean, hell, I've sat in the C. The
C3. Yeah, you barely fit in there.
I barely fit. And it was my Uncle Michael's, and he was about the size of you. I mean, he was as tall as me.
The size of me.
The size of you.
Oh, gosh.
And he fit.
Yeah. A little crowded, but he fit.
Yeah, a little crowded, but he fit.
Remember, like, Mr. Incredible was driving his car? That's what he looked like.
Picture here. Yeah. That's probably, I mean, I bet you always had, like, the windows down and the T-tops off and everything.
Oh, yeah. A little more breathing room.
Yeah. But with the C2, it had improved weight distribution to reduce the bad ride quality, I guess you'd say. It had the standard cast iron 11-inch drum brakes, which remained on all 4 wheels, but increased the width of them to make them more efficient in braking situations.
I think the C1 only had them on the back.
That's fucking terrifying.
Bro, no, that thing, you needed to pump the brakes like 3 times to be able to stop.
No.
You have to go, it's not stopping, then all of a sudden,
well, it stopped. As someone who has had, like, driven cars that have, disc brakes in the front and drums in the back, from what I've read on drum brakes is that they're terrible. Oh, yeah. So to have them on all 4 is kind of like scary, in my opinion.
I only have them in the back.
Yeah. So does the Comanche and the Cherokees.
Oh, that's right,
yeah. Her and AJ are the only one that have disc brakes all the way. Which is why your car stops so good.
Smooth.
Not smooth, not if you're light on that brake.
Oh, yeah.
You step on that thing, you're going forward. She knows. And yours?
In my Grand Cherokee?
In the Grand Cherokee?
Yeah.
That thing's awful.
Yeah, she's probably gotten used to it.
She has, but I haven't. When you go from a 31-year-old Cherokee that has shit brakes to that.
Well, also if you drive like us, that it's always
yeah.
stepping on the gas and then all of a sudden the stoplight turns red.
It's like, oh, there goes.
She drives normal, where it's like, all right, slow down. This is where I need to slow down.
I wouldn't say normal. So for the engine and transmissions, the C2 offered 5 engines during its run. The 327 cubic inch small block V8 was available in the following year ranges and the horsepower. With 1963 through 65, it had 250 horsepower. 63, it had an optional package that made it 340 horsepower. 63 through 67 had 300 horsepower. 65 through 67 had an optional 350 horsepower. And then 64 through 65 had an optional 365 horsepower. The 327 was a fuel-injected small block V8 that was offered in 1963 with 360 horsepower. And 64 through 65 with 375 horsepower. The 396 cubic inch big block V8 was offered in 1965 with 425 buff ass horses. 425. The 427 big block, which I think is equivalent to 7 liters.
Holy crap!
This is a 7-liter big block V8. Was offered in 1966 and 67 with 390 horsepower, but only the 66 was offered with the 425 horsepower option.
Good thing gas was cheap back then.
I mean, in today's standards, it was cheap, but back then, it's like...
Well, I mean, if you could afford something that big, that expensive. For them, that's expensive, For them, that would be expensive, so that means they could afford, all that luxury stuff.
Yeah, I guess
good
so.
House, good gas.
I guess so.
So that would be cheap for them.
Yeah. Finally, the 427 big block tri-power V8 was offered in 1967 with 400 horsepower version and a 435 horsepower option.
Damn.
I don't know about you, but I haven't driven a car with more than 290 horsepower.
I was gonna say, I don't think I have either.
I haven't even driven 300 yet.
Actually, I would have to see how much my dad's Ford gives out.
I mean, with a 5-liter flathead V8, you're probably looking in the 300s.
So one.
That's it. Yeah, pretty much. The C2 Corvette was only offered in 3 transmissions during its run, including a 3 and a 4-speed manual transmission and a 2-speed Power Glide automatic transmission.
Oh gosh.
I mean, do you really expect a 2-speed automatic to hold 435 horsepower?
I guess you're right.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Miss 8-speed transmission over here.
Do
you want to keep going or do you want to...
Keep going.
Fuck me, bro. Alright.
This is all your idea.
Actually, this was both of our
ideas, man.
He's like, I don't want to do the C2.
I didn't want to do the C2 because it's a crap load of things.
There's so much information on it.
Almost there, bro.
Not
I'll
really.
contribute in some speeches.
Are you sure? There's some model changes between 63 and 67. The 63 Stingray came with a standard 250 horsepower, 327 cubic feet. Why the fuck did it say that? Cubic inch engine, with an optional version that made it as much as 360 horsepower. The acceleration was improved over the previous generation due to the lighter weight of the car and the engine as well. In '64, the Corvette had only various small changes, including the elimination of the of the faux air intakes on the hood. On the other hand, the faux vents on the rear peeler was made as a functional on the left side of the coupe. So I don't know about you, but I hate like those fake ass vents.
Oh yeah, that they put like stickers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not even stickers, but most of them were just like indents into the hood that they just put plastic in.
Oh, I seen someone that they just like glue them on there like they're just stickers. I think it looks ridiculous.
Yeah, it's dumb. A lot of Subaru owners.
Yeah.
Fucking Subaru.
We gotta get AJ some of those.
Honestly, I'll get him that fake hood scoop.
Oh, God.
Also in 1964, the suspension was improved slightly for this year, as well as the sound insulation. The drivetrain choices remain the same, except for the 365 horsepower engine had a new 4-barrel Holley carburetor instead of the previous Carter carburetor on it. Sales for the 1964 slightly improved over the 63. It slightly improved over 1963 because people were starting to accept the new look of the Corvette and the fact that the Corvette is here and it's wanting to compete with people and it's trying to get the attention of it. In 1965, the Stingray added a totally new braking system and larger engine choices. More power,
More power,
baby. The 396 big block V8 made its debut with a huge 425 horsepower at the time, which in today's standard is still a lot.
Oh yeah. Didn't see how many vehicles with that many horsepower.
No. Unless it's Dodge, then it's just
true. Yeah. But you got the Hellcat, you got the Demon,
the Durango. Hellcat Red Eye, wide body.
Nothing but Dodge.
Nothing but Dodge. Domestic, not domesticated. And then another small block V8 producing 350 horsepower was added. Another big addition for this year was 4-wheel disc brakes. Disc brakes were finally introduced.
Finally, no, not those drum
not
brakes.
the fucking drum brakes. The hood styling was cleaned up, so there was no indentations. The front fenders now had vertical exhaust vents that were fully functional. So if you look at the where are you? I'll pull up a picture for us and I'll put it right her. You look. Where are you? It's hard to see with this picture. Maybe we can find a better one. Hold on. Okay, so these vents right here on the side, those were fully functional to let the hot air of the engine bay just kind of dissipate out. So, which is good. They had fake ones on there for a while, and then finally got rid of them and made them fully functional.
They just made holes in there?
Huh?
Them just make holes in there and then just run like an exhaust or something?
No. So they still had the tailpipe and everything coming out. See, that's the tailpipe.
Oh, okay.
All this is pretty much a second grill. You know how like in the front you just have the mesh and everything in there? That's all they pretty much did here.
Oh, okay.
They just kind of overlapped it, and on the sides where it was overlapping and they were hanging, they just had like mesh in there.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So that way you couldn't stick your hand in and shit like that. So they were, everything was good. Yeah, okay. So in 1966, and the big block V8 was now available in two forms, one with the 390 horsepower and the other with the 425. At this point, big block engines were far more in demand than small blocks. So Chevy cut the available small blocks to two choices and the previous 5. So pretty much nobody wanted a small block V8.
I mean, why would you? You can get a bigger engine.
I mean, I guess. This is back in the 60s. People were racing these things down the streets and stuff. And
you wanted to win. They were betting money on these cars.
yeah, I mean,
so they want to get the bigger engine.
So there was no point for a small block at the time. The last year of the C2 was 1967, and with 5 years of tweaks under the hood, it was considered the best of the bunch. So, 67 was considered the best of the years. You had the 3 large fender vents that were replaced with 5 smaller ones, and only one backup light that were used right above the license plate. The optional hard top for the Corvette. Hold on. What the fuck am I saying here? The optional hard top for the Corvette convertible was outed with a new black vinyl cover.
Ugh. I don't like those.
I don't either. Vinyl roofs are awful. But it was popular at the time. People liked vinyl roofs.
Yeah, especially when it was convertible.
The main engine change was the available 427 with a Rochester 3x2 barrel carburetors called the Triforce. This engine was factory rated at 430 horsepower. But if we're being truthful, from what I've heard, this thing makes like 560 horsepower.
No way.
This is from what I've heard. From what I've looked up online and everything like that. Chevy didn't want to push. They didn't want to push people away with saying this thing's 560 horsepower. They're just nice. There's only 5 horsepower more than the other. They're like, fuck it. The problem with this engine is that it was required to have special racing fuel rated at 103 octane, which was not very available at the time. It still really isn't, to be honest.
I was gonna say I don't see it around here.
It's hard to get 100 octane, but
yeah.
I mean,
them racing gas, bro.
Honestly.
Can't afford that here.
Nope.
we got shitty vehicles here.
Yeah, pretty much. The engine was not marketed at the casual Corvette buyer, so the people who wanted to get a Corvette, they didn't have to get the Triforce V8. But if you wanted a competitive race car, then damn, that was the engine for you.
Yeah.
That was the engine for you. But what doesn't make sense to me is why they didn't put the Triforce in this next package, the Z06 package. It was a racing package that was offered in the first. Oh, now I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So it was because. So it was first time offered in 1963. The options included in this package were vacuum brake boosters, so help you stop better and everything else like that. Dual master cylinders, 20% larger front anti-roll bar, stiffer shocks and springs, finned aluminum drums with cooling air scoops and vents. So the drum brakes had scoops and everything to bring more air into it, so that way everything in the drum brake didn't get so hot.
So they went from putting
no, this was back in 1963.
When did they put the Ford disc on there?
That was 65.
Oh, okay.
So this is 2 years earlier.
Okay.
The brakes were, I don't know what this word is. Stintered. Metallic linings.
If we can find it. Oh.
Yeah.
Stintered? Yeah.
I don't know.
Sintered.
Sintered?
Yeah, it's not stintered.
Oh, shit. I can't read. There was also a 36.5 gallon gas tank in there. That's still big even by today's standard. It was also had the 5.4 liter V8 putting out 360 horsepower. It was a 327 cubic inch engine with fuel injection.
Fuely.
So all I'm pretty much hearing is that carbureted is pretty shit.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like. The package was initially only offered on C2 coupes due to the larger gas tanks, which wouldn't fit on the convertibles. Because you got to put that top down somewhere. Eventually, the package was offered on both coupes and convertibles, and the gas tank was taken off the standard package, but remained optional for coupes. The last one, is the Grand Sport Racer. The Grand Sport Corvette was a secret project triggered by the competition of the Ford Shelby Cobra. So Zora Arkus Dumtov, the Corvette chief engineer, initially had plans to build about 125 models of the Grand Sport.
It's not even... It's like 1% that he did.
Yeah. So, however, the project was halted after the GM executives found out. Unfortunately, GM was not, it wasn't like Dodge and all them over at Chrysler, where they wanted to compete in racing and they wanted to appeal to a younger buyer with more horsepower and everything else like that. Shelby was out there making the Cobra, and that thing was, hell, that is one of the most sought out American cars ever made. If I would give everything for a Cobra. That's also I don't like a lot of Corvettes, but that is on the top of the list of not Corvettes, convertibles. I love Corvettes, but convertibles. As I don't like convertibles, but that is on the top of the list for convertibles that I like. The Cobra. But the GM executives found out that they were making this car, and only about 5 Grand Sport cars were ever built, and they ended up in private collections, and they're still there to this day. The Grand Sport design included a thinner fiberglass panels, so to make it even lighter, and one of the engines used was the all aluminum small block engine, which made about 550 horsepower at 6,400 RPM.
God, that's a lot of RPMs right there.
I think even with my cars, I don't think I've gotten that bitch over.
I don't think mine goes over 4,000.
So, I mean, okay, so that's pretty much the gist of these Corvettes and everything else like that. But these cars hold such a big son of a bitch. They hold such a big part of America's history in these cars that it's these are some of the best cars that were made back in the 60s. The unfortunate thing is that they were not all affordable because they wanted to make these sports cars. Back then, back in the 60s, people had cars coming out like the Pontiac GTO. You'd say any other car, the Pontiac GTO is one of the coolest cars in my opinion.
I have to agree on that.
And it was also one of the most powerful cars back then that was affordable to the American people. Then you had, the Chevy Chevelle and all those other cars that were coming out. And, the Ford Mustang, of course. But, I mean, hell, this is what I heard, is that the executive of GM at the time, okay, he didn't want anything to do with the higher horsepower cars and compete with the racing and everything else like that.
He was just looking for looks, wasn't he?
He
wanted them to look good.
He pretty much just wanted a luxury vehicles out of them. Well, then one of his executives, I guess, or vice executives or something like that, they went through and they put a Ford flathead V8 in one of the Chevy cars. Okay. And the guy didn't tell the president of GM at the time. Just said, let's go for a drive. Okay. So we went on the drive. They pulled over to the side of the road and they went through, and he's like, how does it feel? The president of GM, he liked it. He liked how it felt. Well, then they went and they popped the hood. God, he was
probably like, what the hell is this?
He said, why in the hell would anyone put a Ford engine in here? Which is true. Why the fuck would anyone put a Ford engine in anything? But the guy ended up making a point to the president that kids nowadays they want fun, they want power. They're they're in the 60s, and this is the first group of teenagers that have money in their pockets, and they want power. They want fun.
And you also have to think about, like you were saying, 50s, 60s, you have them kids that just want to they want to race, they want to,
Exactly.
put money on their vehicles. And then you got the older people, they're pretty much suffering from polio. They're here dying, and which their biggest audience was the young people.
Right.
Which I'm assuming nowadays it's the same thing.
It's still the same
same thing because that's who's going to be spending the money. The older people are like, the older people, they have their
desired
cars. Even if it is a C1 or a C2, something like that, they have it already. They're like, I don't care.
Right.
But nowadays, it's the same deal. It's, I want to get the Dodge Demon. I want to get the Dodge Hellcat. All the stuff like that. And that's always going to be the audience. It's the young people that are ready to spend that money. Because they want to race their cars. And that's it's the only thing that makes sense.
I mean, and you don't see as much. I guess you don't see as much street racing and everything like that. And I guess
because it's illegal.
it was illegal back then too. But
true, but back then they were worrying about other stuff like World War II and stuff.
Polio.
Polio, yeah.
But the thing of it is like, eventually, like the 90s. Oh, the 90s is a big change in scenery for everything because. That's when tuner cars started becoming. Japanese imported tuner cars became a really, really big fad back then. Hell, they made a whole fucking series based on it, The Fast and the Furious. Granted, the first one's only really the one. Maybe the second and the third one too. They focus on the Japanese tuner cars more than any other car.
The Supra.
Is that Super Dude?
That a Super Dude.
And the Mitsubishi Eclipse and the Lancer Evolution and the Mazda RX-7 Skylines. Oh god, the Skylines. We're gonna have to make a series on the fucking Skyline.
just on the Skyline.
Just on the Skyline, bro.
3-parter, 4-parter.
There's like 5 generations, so.
It's 5-parter then, one for each generation.
But no, the Corvette, in my opinion, still is one of the best cars that an American manufacturer has ever made. Granted, it's not really made for the affordable person.
Oh no.
But you still. The unfortunate thing is that the fucking main audience for the Corvette is retired people. Retired man that. All right.
Back then.
Well, even the reason I think it appeals to an older generation now. Well, not now, but back then.
I was gonna say the way
they're marketing the C8 is, yeah. I personally love the C8.
Yeah, that's we're young. You're never gonna see an old guy, or whatever, an old woman, whatever, drive a C8 or purchase a C8 because they want.
Because they want familiarity.
Yes.
Because
they're not used to these horsepowers. They're used to this horsepower.
Well,
the engines back then. So I just want to keep it classic.
Exactly, and even like the people that the older guys that have the C7, the C7 still is like if they were born in the 60s or 70s or something like that, the C7 of the 2000 teens still somewhat resembles back then.
Yeah. The
C8 now. Not even close. The C8 is a totally different animal. It is, in my opinion, one of the best Corvettes out there. The mid-engine design.
Ooh.
The mid-engine, it's great. The mid-engine design. They wanted
idea ever.
They wanted to. A lot of the engineers for Corvette wanted to do the mid-engine design like in the 70s, I think.
Which they should have done.
Which they kept getting shot down though.
That's true.
So they didn't really ever do it, and it sucks. But I think if they would have came out with a mid-engine design then, I don't think they would have thought it out as good, and I don't think it would have turned out as good as the C8 did. The C8 with I mean, because of it being mid-engine, the center of gravity is lower. The center of the weight distribution is in that car they made weight distribution 50-50.
Oh yeah.
The weight distribution in that car is perfect.
Go fast, man.
Plus, yeah, it's mid-engine. There's more power. There's more weight down to the rear axle when power transfers. Their tires won't slip as much.
Yeah.
It is a good car. The C1, I personally, that is my least favorite Corvette.
C1.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it does, to me. Unfortunately, the reason is because it doesn't look like a Corvette.
Well, technically, it was the first Corvette, so
I mean,
all the other ones don't look like the first one.
I mean,
I see what you're talking about because we're used to these race cars, look that resemble a race car. But I see what you mean. But I wouldn't mind having one like in my garage. That would be one of the cars.
Only garage. You don't want to drive it or anything like that?
Oh no, I would leave it in the garage. Heck no. No, I would not drive that, especially because of the brakes.
What if you do a brake system upgrade, like do a modern retro?
It would just ruin the.
I mean, would it, or would it make it better?
It would make it. The brakes would make it better, but it would just not make it original anymore.
I mean, I guess.
But anyways, I would because I like the way they look.
Yeah.
The the way they did the grill, the headlights, stuff like that, the tail lights. The interior. In 1953, you have just one color to choose from. You have white exterior, red interior.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all you got to choose from. So that's 300 of them made. That's all I got. But still, I would like to, if not have one, then I would like to, at least drive one in a safe place where I don't have to brake.
Drag strip.
Yes,
don't stop.
And where if it has an emergency, it doesn't have an emergency brake.
Oh fuck! Parachutes.
There you go. Just have somebody in front of you. Just stop.
Yeah, Hulk.
But I would like to at least drive one.
Yeah. I don't know. The C2 is a pretty close second. I do like the convertible on the C2. Mm-hmm. Again, not a big fan of convertibles, but the C2 does look pretty good in a convertible. I don't know. What are we recording already? An hour?
An hour, yeah.
So
we'll just leave it at that.
We'll leave it at this. We have
any viewers, just comment what you would like to have. A C1 or a C2.
Next episode is going to be about the C3, 4, and 5. And then the third episode is going to be about 6, 7, and 8. So
hopefully it'll be shorter than this one.
I don't know about that.
Maybe around 40 minutes, an hour.
We'll see. Hell, it could be longer. Could be shooting for another hour. So, anyways, this is Sean.
This is Luis.
And this has been Gearheads.
Peace.
Vroom vroom.